Do you know that thing where your fuzz sounds amazing, but then you add in another pedal, buffer or tuner, and it absolutely sounds terrible? That's not your imagination. Your fuzz pedal isn't broken. That's because it's expecting to see a guitar's pickup impedance, and it doesn't. So I've built 10 of these transformer input circuits that are completely passive, but solve this issue. Today I'm going to show you how to build your own, but if you don't want to build your own, head to hellosailoreffects.com and you can grab one of the 10 that I've built. Every pedal you purchase helps fund the show, and I really do appreciate it. By the end of this video, you'll get to hear a fuzz pedal getting hit with something that isn't the right impedance and something that is the right impedance, and you'll see the difference of adding this circuit in and out. Once you hear this, you'll realise how many pedals have been lying to you. This is an exciting one, and it's one that I think that every fuzz pedal owner or any germanium pedal owner really should look at. And it is, of course, the input transformer circuit, or better known as a pickup simulator. Now, this isn't my circuit. I got this from AMZ years ago. I'll link the article in the description just in case anyone wants to read it. It's fantastic. Also, a special note goes out to Stu from Tate Effects. So he put me onto this. He basically gave me his version of it, if you like. So, what are we going to need? First of all, you're going to need an enclosure. Unless you're putting this into a pedal, i.e. in the front end of a fuzz pedal or something like that, you're going to need an enclosure. And I've gone with this. This is just a small enclosure that I've finished in F1 colour, AMG, Mercedes, green, turquoise green. But it is nitrocellulose lacquer. I've sourced this out. I really like the colour. And I've gone with my Snow Sailor artwork. Now there's going to be 6 of these with the Snow Sailor artwork on. And there's also going to be 4 with the Love is a Losing Game artwork on. If anyone wants to purchase these, they'll be available in my website now. Link in the description and no doubt a pinned comment. Thank you for buying pedals. It really does help support the show. Now, let's get on to it. What else do we need? Well, first of all, you're going to need a tagboard. Why a tagboard? Well, because I love tagboard and we build everything on tagboard here. So you're going to need one of them. Then you're going to need one of these beasts. Probably the most important part of this circuit is the transformer. What transformer do you need? Well, you need one with a primary of 10k and a secondary of 600 ohms. Now I'm going to link in the description an affiliates link to a transformer that will work if anyone wants to go and buy one. That would be amazing if you bought it through the link. It just helps the show. It helps me buy things like my awesome Nipex nips and little bits like that. After the transformer, we're going to need a capacitor. Now this capacitor, if you read the article, you can pretty much go any value with this or omit it completely if you want. I like to go about 470 PF. However, I have these. Now these are Dubelier caps. It's a 510 PF mica cap, so a silver mica cap. It's a really old one, and I'm going to be using these for these builds today just because they're an awesome capacitor, and I don't think there's that much difference between 470 and 510 to my untrained ears anyway. Then we've got our input and output jacks. I'm using the usual skeleton type like I always use. Then short lever 2-pole, because there's only 2 sides, 2-pole double throw switch. That's just going to be an on-off switch. I mean, you could have a stomp switch if you wanted. You can have any type of switch you want. But I'm just going to put an on-off switch in there for this because I want this to be like a standalone unit that you can put anywhere on your board in front of any pedal. Or, as we'll find out later on, maybe even after pedals. But we'll get into that in the sound sample. And then last but not least, you need a 100k potentiometer, log, so audio taper. And that is it. You've probably done exactly the same thing as me, where you set up your fuzz pedal or your germanium Rangemaster, you're all excited, you hit a chord, you hit a note, and you get this trebly, squeaky mess. Well, what's happening there is your germanium transistor is really sensitive to the input impedance. And it wants to see a guitar's pickup impedance. But it's not seeing that. It's seeing a tube screamer, a tuner, a buffer, or whatever you've got in your signal path. Maybe even a wireless unit. What this transformer circuit does is it allows your germanium transistor or your pedal to see a guitar's pickup impedance. Your fuzz isn't broken. It's just not getting the input that it wants. Let's talk transformers. So what is going on with these transformers? Well, let me show you. A transformer is just a coil of wire. So if we draw our coil of wire, there's a nice coil of wire. We've got our input and our output. Looks great, doesn't it? And then in the center of our coil of wire is a magnet. Great. And then on the other side, we have another coil of wire. Now, sometimes that can be wrapped on the outside. It can be wrapped next to whatever. There's another wire wrapped round also in a coil, but maybe a bigger coil, so there's less wire. And then we have two connections. Great. Now, if we imagine this to be our transformer, this is the primary side. Primary, and this side on this particular transformer is 10k. And this is the secondary side. And this side on this transformer is, what do we say, 600 ohms. That doesn't matter. What matters is this transformer acts like a pickup, like a guitar's pickup, in the fact that it will react in the same way to voltages going in, AC voltages going in. What happens is, if you apply an AC voltage to this, the voltage creates a magnetic field because of the coil. And the magnetic field expands and collapses and interacts with this coil, it interacts with this. You don't need to know how, and this is a really simplistic way of explaining it, but what you need to do is just press the big red I believe button and say, okay, your signal goes through this coil and it reacts like a guitar's pickup. And on the output side, we're going to get our guitar's pickup. Now, our transformer has 6 legs, so the center leg is like an extra leg in the middle here on both sides. And all that is halfway through the coil, there's just a way of attaching a wire there. Now, on the AMZ article that we're talking about, they suggest that if you add a switch in and you can connect your guitar signal so it's coming in there and then coming out of here, it'll be like a single coil because there's less coil. And then if you keep going and use the whole coil, it'll be like a humbucker effect and you get that. I don't find that to be true. I don't find that to work. It doesn't really make that much difference to my ears. Now, you may say it does, so you may want to use both connections on your transformer, you know, both outputs. But for me, yeah, it's not really. Now, what we call this a center tap. That's not important, but in electrical engineering, which, as we all know, I'm not an electrical engineer, we call that a center tap. So how are we going to do that on our transformer? Well, first of all, our secondary side, so this side here, we're just going to cut off all of them legs. We're not going to use the secondary side at all. Not even a little bit. We don't need it. It just needs to be there to react with the primary side. And then on the primary side, this middle leg, the center tap, we don't need that. We're just going to cut that off. We do not need it. All we need is the input and the output. It doesn't really matter which side of the coil you label as in and which side you have as out. It doesn't matter, but that's what we're going to use. Now, I hope that makes sense to those of you who are interested in this kind of thing. In fact, I'd be interested to know if anyone in the comments could write and tell me if you like this sort of extra explanation or you just want me to get on and get the wiring done and show you how to build your own. But anyway, that's how I understand it. And if you want more on transformers or more on capacitors and more on how stuff works, please let me know in the comments. Let's get this transformer and capacitor onto the tagboard. If you want to build your own one of these, remember, I'll have the transformer and maybe even a capacitor linked in the description below. They are affiliates links, so I do get a little bit of kickback. Thank you for supporting the show. First up, we're going to prep the tagboard. Now, because I've cut the end of the tagboard, there's this bit here that's a little bit longer, and I like to put that on the left-hand side, and that's because our transformer is going to sit that side, and it means that there's a little bit more under it to support it. You could get away with 2 tags if you wanted, but you know, I see no reason not to just use 3. Give yourself a bit of space. What I like to do is take my flat nose Nippex snips and take off these tags. Not all of them, as we'll see. So just these 2 here and these 2 here. I leave the center 2 tags in place. And that's because the capacitors I'm using, this capacitor, is too big to go between the tags comfortably. So I just take them 2 out. And then I take these 2 out because actually the transformer is going to sit in here. But it's not going to be anywhere near these tags, so we're not going to use them. So I'll just take them out the way, and then we get to use the pads for something else, which I'll show you. And to take these off, all you do is just give them a wiggle with the flat nose. Snips right at the bottom of the base of it, and it just snaps off. Nice and easy. There. So we've just got our center 2 full tags in there, if you like. Next up, we're going to sort out our capacitor. Now, normally I like to start left to right, but this is a heavy transformer compared to how lofty the legs are, which isn't very. So I like to leave that till last. Whatever. Now to clean the transformer legs, to clean the capacitor legs, I'm going to use my Knipex snips as ever. Apologies to everyone who hates me doing this. And I have only just cleaned my mat, and this is going to mess it all up again. Brilliant. So because this is a large cap, all I'm going to do is just bend the legs over so they're pointing down like this, and then slot them through the centre holes on our tagboard. Now, if anyone's wondering where I get this tagboard from, I get it from a place called hificollective.co.uk. They do all sorts. They do like a nickel version, silver version, a gold tag version, all this stuff. It's worth looking at them. Anyway, I'm going to slot the legs through the centre hole, and then I'm just going to bend them over. And if I give that a little squeeze to make sure that it's sitting flush against the bottom, and then just snip the excess off, and then same on this side. A little squeeze just to make sure that it's sitting flush, and snip off the excess. Brilliant. Now our cap is ready to be soldered in, and all I'm going to do is just wet the tip, and as ever I like to clean my tip, get it nice and fresh. There's something special about having a freshly clean tip. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just my OCD going in there, who knows. And then I'm just going to solder these two joints here. There's our capacitor now in place. This isn't a new concept. Loads of companies do this, and it all originates from this one article. It's an AMZ article. It's Jack Orman. They come up with this idea of making a pickup simulator. Now, I spent years trying to figure this thing out, trying to get the right values, the right transformer, and all of this stuff. Now, my mate Simon over at JSA FX, who everyone knows that I think's a genius, he put me on to a guy called Stu Tate of Tate FX. And he said, Stu might be able to help me with this. We got talking, and instead of just helping me, he gave me the answers. He said, here's my circuit, mate, try all this out. He sent me a load of pedals. He was an absolute legend. He's probably the nicest guy in the pedal business, although he wouldn't want you to know that. Anyway, fast forward a few years, and I've been adding these to my Rangemasters pretty consistently now. That means that I know what's going to work, what doesn't work, and what I like and what I don't like. The AMZ article has a lot of information in. It has a few different circuits to try, and a few different mods and stuff, which I don't find useful. So in this video, you're going to see how I wire up my own input transformer circuits, so you can build one yourself. If you don't want to build one yourself, great, I'm going to have 10 of them available. There'll be 6 with the Snow Sailor artwork on, and then there'll be another 4 that have the Love is a Losing Gain artwork on. All finished in the F1 AMG turquoise green. You know, I'm not a massive car fan, but a few lads in work, they suggested this colour. So I've managed to source it out in nitrocellulose. How cool is that? Head over to hellosailorfx.com or use the link in the description / the pinned comment, and you'll be able to get your pedal now. Thank you for supporting the show. Buying pedals is how we fund Hello Sailor FX, and I really do appreciate it. Next up is our transformer. We're not going to use the side that isn't marked P. The P stands for primary, so that's the 10K side. This side here we're not going to use, so all I'm going to do is snip off all 3 legs of that side. It feels weird to do it because, I don't know, it just does. Now we've got our 3 legs of our primary. Now, as I've said, I don't use the centre leg because I don't believe in this little switch that changes from humbuckers to single coils and all that jazz. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think it works the way that people want it to work necessarily, so I just clip that leg out too. And then I'm going to give the 2 legs that are left a clean. I'm especially careful here because I know that they are attached to a coil inside. Now I'm going to take my flat nose Knipex snips and bend out the 2 little tabs. So these little tabs on the frame, normally they would go through the PCB and then bend out and get soldered in, just to hold the transformer's weight to the PCB, if you like. We don't have that luxury because we don't have a PCB, so I just bend them out and I'll show you how to fit them later. Now with the legs splayed out, going forward and aft or front and back, whichever way you want to do it for us non-sailors, I'm just going to slide it through one set of tags, snip the excess off the other side, probably a bit more than that I think, and then slide it back through. And now what I'm going to try and do is get it so then it's as central as possible. What you don't want, and this is important, you don't want the transformer to touch this capacitor. I don't know why, but that just seems to induce a lot of noise in my builds in the past. Now, as you'll see right here, the tabs are overhanging these two tags, and that's important for stability. Now, I don't always do this, but as this is a standalone unit, what I'm going to do is solder them tabs down to the tag. And all that's going to do is hold the transformer in place. I mean, technically, we could, if we wanted to, we could tie that to earth, and it'll earth the transformer's casing, make it a bit quieter, you know, make sure that no noise can be induced that way, which I no doubt will. And then I'm going to solder the other side to it as well, just for a bit of stability. I mean, this thing I want to be on someone's pedal board touring or whatever, so I don't want the transformer's weight to pull it off the board. And now I'm going to solder both tags of the transformer, both legs, into the tags on the tag board. Real simple circuit this, there's not much else going in there. Simple but effective is what I would say. And if we snip the excess off, there you have it. That's our tag board complete. Ooh, if I'm not throwing it away. That's our tag board complete. We've got our transformer attached. It's not going anywhere. We've got our really old cool capacitor, which is going to do some filtering into ground as we've discussed. Yeah, this should be good. Now what's going on? Let's get all of this into the enclosure and then we'll do the wiring. Here's an interesting trick that someone wrote on my last video, and I'd love to know if you guys have used it in the past. Well, I always mention that I take off this little tab of the side of my potentiometers. I don't use it. My potentiometers sit flush against the enclosure and I don't add this in. But what someone wrote in the comments there was, if we add this to the spline of our potentiometer in the center here, ooh, if I can ever get it in there, that's going to stop the potentiometer from being crushed by the pot when we come to do that. Now, I've never done that before. I normally use the end of a cable tie. Well, if I bother at all, that is. So I thought that was rather interesting. I'd like to know if you guys do that too. There's everything in our enclosure, and rather pretty it's looking now. Let's flip it over, and I can't believe how much space I've got to wear because we've got no stomp switch. Anyway, how are we going to wire this up? So first things first, I'm going to just go with the signal path. And our signal path is going to come from this tab here on our input jack. That is where our guitar signal is going to come in. And that's going to go to the center pin on the left hand side of our double pole double throw switch. Then we're going to have a little loop on this side, because if we have our switch in a down position, I want the pedal to be on. Which means that in the down position, the top two tags are engaged. And in the up position, there, the bottom two tags are engaged. And so I'm going to put a little bypass loop in here. Then I'm going to take a signal from the center pin here and I'm going to run it round, and that's going to go to this tag here on our output. And that means that when when the transformer's not engaged, we're going to have our signal coming in here to this tag, through these tags, out of this tag and straight back to here, which means that this transformer circuit will not be engaged. Let's go ahead and get that wired in. So there we have our signal now wired in. We've got our input jack going to our double pole double throw switch, coming out of the switch and going to our output jack. Great. So that leaves our input to our circuit here and our output from our circuit here. So how does that wire up? Simple. From our input, we're going to send a wire down. That's going to come round and go to the input of our transformer here. Then it's going to go through our transformer and come out and go to this pin here on our potentiometer. Then from our potentiometer on the other side, I'm going to send a wire back round, and it's going to come... Oh, wait there. I've just labelled that wrong. I just said come from this pin here, which is actually, as we know, going to be earthed out, so that would have been wrong. Right, let's do this in stages then, just so I don't mess it up. We're going to come from the input pin here, round, and we're going to go to the input of this transformer, which is the center pin on the bottom row. So let's get that wired in. And because I'm using my silicone wire, it's nice and easy to strip and tin. I'm going to use the same wiring route all the way round. You can wire it in any direction you like. Right, so that's our input, our input signal is going to come from that 3-pole double throw switch there, and it's going to come down. I'm going to run it round the outside of the enclosure here. There's rather a lot more space in here than I'm used to, and it's going to come round and go to this center tag over here. Nice. This is where it goes through the transformer. Perfect. Now we're going to come from the other side of the transformer. I'm going to go over to this tag here, which is the input of this potentiometer. Then it's going to come out of the potentiometer via this center tag, and then that makes this potentiometer kind of just like a resistor. Normally on any other volume pot or stuff like that, you would attach this tag to ground, but we don't want to lose any signal. We don't want to bleed the volume. We just want to increase the resistance. So I'm going to snip that tag off now, so then I'm not tempted later on to go into autopilot and solder that to ground, because let's face it, that's been known. All right, and then from this center pin here, it's going to come out of the potentiometer. It's going to go round and come to our capacitor down here. Now I've run everything the way that I said I was going to. Our output is coming from our potentiometer round the outside of the enclosure, and now we're going into the bottom of our 510 PF cap. You'll probably use a 470 if you're building this yourself, I would imagine. In fact, I'll probably have some 470 PF caps linked in the description below. So we're going to there. Great. I'll snip that off, but what we're also going to do is we're going to have to come out of that tag as well and go back round to our output. So not only is this coming from our potentiometer, it's also going to our output. So how do I do that? I like to cut it to length and then put a new wire next to it and strip both wires at the same time. So then I know they're both the same length. And then I just give them a twist. And then, well done, Joe. That was the worst twist I've ever done. Yeah, so you put them next to each other and hopefully give them a twist so they stay together. It does help if you're snipping maybe a bit longer to help them twist. And then twist them together, and that way you can tin them and make one wire out of two, like this. There you go, second time lucky. Then you can cut that a bit shorter so it's a bit more manageable and put it in the tag. And that way you've got a wire there to run back to our power switch, if you like, or power switch. There's no power in this, it's completely passive, but to run back to our on-off switch. You don't even need to have an on-off switch if you're going to leave it on all the time. If this was inside the pedal, I would just run this to the input of the circuit. So we're going to come back around this way, and then we're going to go into the output of our switch. There we go. Right, and I've made that a little bit too fat to fit through the switch, so all I'm going to do is just give it a squeeze with my flat nose pliers to flatten it out, and then just slot it in. There you go. Nothing can't be sorted with a good set of Nipex snips, or Nipex pliers. And then if I just tidy that up so it's not a mess. There, now signal wise, that is sorted. The only thing left to do is to wire up some ground wires. Now, what needs to attach to ground? Both of our jacks are going to be attached to ground. And they're going to be grounded through the enclosure, but I don't like to rely on that. So what I'm going to do is the tab at the bottom here, the ground jack on each one of these, I'm going to join them together. And then I'm going to run a wire round, and it's going to come to this tag here, which is where our transformer body is. And then I'm going to run another wire out round to this tag here, which is the opposite side of our capacitor. Now the reason for this is this capacitor is going to short any noise in the signal to ground through this connection. Now there's no power in this pedal, it is literally just what you see. I mean, you could fit power and you could fit an LED if you wanted to, but I'm like, come on, that's one extra wire to run on your pedal board. Who wants that? Not me. So I'm going to go ahead now and just tie these two together with a wire, and then another wire is going to come round and go to this tag here and this tag here. There's all the wiring complete. Now I'm going to go ahead and get some cable ties in there, and also last but not least, I'm going to add in a knob. Now I've chose this knob for these. Obviously, I think that this looks really good. It's not quite red, it's not quite pink. Kind of fits in with the vibe of our Snow Sailor artwork. Yeah, we're ready to go. Now we're going to go ahead and get a sound sample. Remembering when this toggle switch is in the up position, the pedal is off, or the circuit is off, and when it's in the down position, the pedal is on, and we've got our transformer in play and our potentiometer. It's that time again. It is time for the sound sample, and this one's going to be interesting. We're going to hear what it sounds like with this transformer circuit in place and without this transformer circuit in place. I'm going to be using the TC wiretap to supply a signal that doesn't come from a pickup, so it's the wrong impedance. That means that it's going to act as if there's like a tube screaming in the circuit or something like that. It is actually digital, so that's even worse. But before we get there, I'd like to just remind you that I have 10 of these units available. 10! 6 with the Snow Sailor and 4 with the Love Is Illusion gain. So if you don't want to build this yourself, you can just buy one of these units. It's completely passive. Plug it straight into your pedal board in front of your germanium pedal, and it'll sort out all your problems. Let's hear what our clean tone sounds like. Not too bad. Now let's add the Vox bender in. Hold your ears. So bad. So bad. Okay, so now let's add in the transformer circuit. And then turn it off. So we can actually turn up the fuzz on this now, and you hear that spikiness? But what does this do? Well, we can actually add some cleanup from our pedal, so you can have this set up to be your clean tone if you wanted to. I mean, come on now. What does it sound like with some strumming? And off. And that sounds more like a fuzz, right? Deep, thick. Oh man. As opposed to piercing. And that's what we're talking about. Okay, so now we've added in the True North Tweed Drive. Excellent pedal. But let's see how that reacts coming from the wiretap and then going into the Vox bender. So here we go with our clean tone. And the True North. Sounds good, doesn't it? And now let's add in the Vox bender. With the True North. Still not great. But now if we add in our transformer. And without. Let's give it some more beans. I mean, it's basically making no difference there, even with all the gain up. But if we add in our transformer, you can hear the textures and the differences. So much better. And then we can even dial back for a bit of clean. Clean. So you get all the colours and all that extra stuff when you're adding this transformer. It really does make everything sound better. I'd like to know if you're going to build one yourself. I'd love to know what you thought of the tones in this and whether you're going to have a go at making this transformer yourself. If you did watch the video this far, please comment "No Sailor" in the comments just so I know you managed to make it all the way through. Thank you for supporting the show, and if you like this one, you're going to love this one.